it was very ingrained in the women in my family anyway, that we were objects for the apostles' pleasure. You are a property. I'm also being groomed little by little. My body, my mind, my everything belonged to the apostle of Jesus Christ. And one day he was going to take me away like a princess, and he was going to make me his concubine. He decided what I studied, if he wanted me to study, if I was going to study, if I was going to go to college, like, what were you going to study? You can't make that choice on your own. Like, even the way I dressed, where I lived, it didn't matter where I was, where I would go. It was all because he was telling me what to do every step of the way. My mom, she wasn't that lucky. She was very little, and I don't know how bad it got for her to have left her 5 kids behind. And she was already so lost in it. So they destroyed my family. LDM, it didn't break my family. It destroyed my family. And I blame La Luz del Mundo for my mother's death. And to this day, they will never, ever, ever be able to make up for all of the damage and the harm that they caused to me. And I know that to millions others.
Mine is the only voice.
Wow.
What have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only tuning in through those podcast platforms and you'd prefer to see our faces, you can go to YouTube at Cults to Consciousness. It's the best way to support the show, guys. Any way that you interact with the post tells the algorithm, hey, let's send this to more people. And of course, it just helps bring awareness to these groups so more people can become more understanding of people leaving and people still in. We did release channel memberships. If you want special YouTube specific perks, that is finally available. You can check that out. It's really easy to join a tier. They all have special perks and badges, even special live streams depending on the tier. If you want to support the podcast, today's guest, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how excited I am. We've been wanting to cover this group for so long, and we've actually been trying to reach out to the directors of a documentary that she was in, and then she just so happened to reach out to us on Instagram, and I'm just so thrilled to finally be talking about La Luz del Mundo. It is specifically, the headquarters are in Mexico, but it's all over the world, and we're going to be talking about her journey being one of the, quote, unconditionals for the leader himself, how she got out, and how she actually helped prosecute some of these people. So thank you so much for joining us, Sochil Martin.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, these platforms are absolutely just such a tool that we need as survivors getting out of these spaces, because as you know, you don't know you're in a cult when you're in a cult. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. And I was watching the documentary today. It's on HBO, Unveiled.
And funny thing about the name, the director mentioned it just because we used to wear veils. It was a form of I'll get into it, but in any sense, that's what it meant. It meant double, like the veil, taking the veil off. Like, I will no longer wear the veil. For women, not men didn't have to wear it, only the women, and it was all ages. As your little girl, you wear veils going into church. And well, when you're a baby, no, but as soon as you start walking, they'll put that little veil on you, and it's a form for women to understand that you are less than. That's a form of understanding yourself, that you are less than the man. Because Jesus, well, I'll get into the doctrine and all of that later, but it was named Unveiled because of the veil that women had to wear.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was beautifully done, and there were so many other survivor stories too, and maybe we can connect with them, but it really just puts all the puzzle pieces together of what this organization or cult is and was. And so I'm excited to hear your perspective. You are multi-generational, right? So you are 4th generation in the church, or were?
Yeah, I was. My daughter would have been the 5th generation.
Wow.
So I go back to my great-grandmothers. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just do a brief overview or understanding of the church itself, and then we'll get into your childhood. So for those who aren't familiar, which is probably most of our audience because we haven't covered this yet, can you just talk about the church and its founding?
Yeah, so it's called, it's in Spanish. It's Iglesia del Dios Vivo, Columna y Apoyo de la Verdad, La Luz del Mundo. That's like the entire name of it. And it, yeah. And it's based out in Guadalajara, Jalisco, in 1926. The founder was very, very, very close friends with the president at time of Mexico. So much so that the president gave Eusebio, who was the founder of La Luz del Mundo, the land that now the big white church lays on. So that land was given to him by the president.
Wow.
And so my husband goes a little deep into more on the historical linings and La Luz del Mundo and its ties to politics, because my husband was a survivor of political trafficking in LDN. And so he talks a little bit more about that. And but yeah, and he was in the military. He was a very, very well-known, respected military man. And then he had his son, Samuel Joaquin, who then takes the leadership, the throne, because he was an apostle, but he was also to us like he was the king. He was the king of the world. And then he passes on, and then his son now takes the reign, I guess you would say, of La Luz del Mundo.
How old was he, do you know, when he took over?
I believe he was 26, 27, Samuel.
Wow.
And then Nason was, I believe he was, I don't know, he was 54 or something. Yeah, around there. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was much older than his dad was when he became apostle.
So it's interesting that it is generational or passed down from father to son, even though they claim that he's divinely appointed.
Yeah, it's a lot of contradictory things that you don't see when you're in there. We didn't see any of it. I was one of Nason's key producers for his communication center. And they had me study first communications, and then they had me study film because they wanted me to film the story of the church. So there was a book that was written, but it was done by the family, and the writers of it were connected to the family, and only things that were allowed to have been said were said and written. And when the movie started to come around, and we started to rally people together to see who would give interviews, who would try out and be like 24/7. If you needed to be there at 5 a.m., you had to be there. Yeah, I asked Nason like what he thought about the list, and there were so many people that he was like, no, not this person, not this person. So even the history of LDM to us was just like this big fantasy that they just collected and put together at their own convenience, right? And it happens
Yep.
everywhere. Like it can even happen in a house with just one descendant, where the grandfather or the grandparents will tell the story to their family, however it may be convenient for them. But in this case, it was the church, right?
Mm-hmm. And I find myself saying this all the time because all cults are basically the same. But as I'm watching this documentary, I'm just thinking of all the ways it's just like Mormonism, the church that I grew up in. I was just like, what?
Yes.
There's this guy who claims to be a prophet, which I am also laughing at myself this morning eating my bowl of cereal. Like, hold on. I still currently up until like a year ago believed that Mormons were the only church that had a true and living prophet in huge air quotes, because that's something that they told us. They're like, we're the only church that still has a living prophet that talks directly to God. And I'm like, that's got to mean something, right? And
You
it's
feel
not
so
even
lucky.
Yes. And I find it so funny that even through doing this show, because I hadn't come across it, I was like, oh, I think they really are the only church that claims to have a true prophet. I mean, of course, you have the FLDS and the breakoffs that have lots of prophets, but that's still within Mormonism. And then I'm watching this going, wait a second, there are so many others. And it's just funny that some things stick. Even when the blindfold comes off, there are some things that you don't necessarily challenge until later. And so this is a church where he's saying, and there's footage of him saying, he directly talks to God, and you can't talk to God. You have to go through him, and so you have to please him. And so, of course, all of the power just goes directly into his hands, and people will do whatever he wants.
Yeah, because if he, so essentially, Jesus is up there just hanging out, he's not for LDM. I mean, it's more like you can't even get to Jesus if it's not through me. So
Wow.
Jesus is there, and the Bible, because they ingrained the Bible into us. But that verse in the Bible where it says that, and I'm sure they said it to you guys too, because of all the apostle myths of it, is that we have a lawyer. We have a lawyer before God, and it was Jesus Christ. But what LDM did is that they made it so, yeah, that verse is very true, but you have to connect it to John 17. Why? Because remember, God is leaving. Yeah, God is up there. I'm sorry, but Jesus is leaving, and only through the apostle can your prayer come to God, because I am one with the apostle. The Jesus is one with the apostle, and the apostle is one with me. And if you're one with the apostle, then you're one with me. And
Yeah.
so that's how they manipulated the entire thing regarding the Joaquin dynasty of religious leaders in LDM. Like they picked, and I'm sure they did this in the Mormon church, because they pick and choose what they want from whatever book that they're using.
Yep.
And whether it's the history or a religious, like, it doesn't matter in what sense. It's just like the manipulation of it through the the narcissist himself, right? Because these are all of the leaders. They all have to be the only ones, right? Like you mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I think these are the same patterns that most of them use. That's why psychologists and they focus on how these men are all narcissists.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's the same exact thing with Mormonism, where they just pick and choose the history they want to show you. They give you half truth. So if you look it up, you might find the same answer. But if you really do a deep dive, you realize that's not the whole truth. And so that's why it's so interesting when I talk to people who are not Mormon, who have maybe done research, and they're like, oh my gosh, Mormon people are so stupid. They don't they really believe all this stuff. And I look at them and I go, I swear to you, most of them have no idea. Most of them have no idea of their actual history, of actually what their prophet was doing and all the horrible things he did, the crimes. Just, they don't know. And so I try to help people understand that even when you're in the group, yes, you are blinded because you have this obedience and this blind faith, but at the same time, you're not being given all of the information, and it's on purpose because they want to keep you around. They want to just show you the things that make you go, yes, that makes sense. I'll stick around. This is what I need to be doing. And specifically with LDM, they really create this container and this bubble to where if you leave, if you even question it, you're completely cut off. I mean, at least within Mormonism, they don't go that extreme. But I heard you saying in one of your interviews that if you choose not to get baptized at 14, your own family will be like, hey, find another place to live. You're not with us anymore. That's really extreme.
And it's not just, and what's sad is that it wasn't even just the unconditionals, because there were unconditionals and there are different types. So for example, the unconditionals, many of them would even write letters themselves saying that sending it to the apostle, hoping that he'll receive it, whether it's through the minister or in his mailbox that he has in his house, hoping that one day they get it. But the ones that he will receive, and he will take them as unconditional to send them to the labor wherever he wants or whatever he wants to do with them. There were people who write their letters to him, and only through like higher ranks will he get it. However, there are other unconditionals of vow, in my case, which was you're promised by a family member who was already an unconditional vow to him, so you can even be born into it, and that's my case. So in my case, I didn't get a chance to like write a letter and say, I want to give my life to you and, do whatever you want with my life. No, it was just like, that was my upbringing. That's all I knew. But in the sense of really putting you in that bubble of not, of if you decide to say, well, I'm not going to get baptized, That was for everybody in LDM. That was for everybody in LDM who, whether you were a first generation, second generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. I have friends, a couple of sisters who are very good friends of mine. They're both sisters. They have a podcast called Salir de una Sexta. They're fifth generation. And it goes back to their great great grandma. So the women who started this founding this organization with the leader himself. And yeah, I mean, if you decide to say no, you forget you have a home to come back to. You don't have a community anymore. You wouldn't, in my case, I wouldn't have had grandparents anymore. I wouldn't have had aunts, uncles, brothers, cousins. And it's kind of like everything that I don't have anymore. Because even at 30, when I did get out, it was still very much, you are an adult and you can make your own choices, but you only have these limited amount of choices and options in LDM. That if you go inside and you're a woman, you have to sit on the right hand. The men sit on the left hand. If you are going to, if there's going to be a sermon of some sort, the men have priority both in singing and if there's a consecration, which is when they give these conversations to the church on what to believe in. And it's always around the election, right? The divine election of the apostle. But it was only men who could talk about it, not women. Women weren't allowed to take the ministry. And then you had your 9 o'clock prayers, which they say that women used to, they call me a liar and anybody who says different. But it's the truth. Women couldn't even, if it was a 9 o'clock prayer, they had to take the literal pulpit, put it down on the bottom and put it toward the side of the women. So it's like, you're not really taking the pulpit. There's just a place where you can put your Bible and your hymn book. But other than that, you're not up there. Only men can have that position. So we were very much second class citizens in LDM. And then kids just had no rights. Kids just had no rights. They have no rights. Even it's still happening now. So in LDM, it's really been a fight and it's really been a struggle to get people to care that although it's so hurtful and it's so sad that adults are going through all of this coercion, they're going through all of this servitude, and but what about when the kids are involved? We were kids and we had no rights, and kids there still have no rights until we start reaching out to, local communities and authorities and council members, and they still are like, oh wait, this is an issue. Let's really, we need to count on the community to take care of kids. Doesn't matter where you are. Teachers, we go to junior highs as well, and we talk to principals and teachers and junior high kids, and we want we to elementary students of what is coercion, what is consent, what does human trafficking look like. You need to know what human trafficking looks like, because it happened to you and you didn't even know it was happening to you when you're a kid. And what are you going to do? Mom, this hurts me. Mom, this makes me sad. Mommy, oh, you're talking about the apostle of Jesus Christ? Get out of my house. So what option do you have? Buy grandpa, buy grandma, buy aunt, buy uncle, buy cousins, buy everything. Buy a home, my bed, anything. So and that meant I was going to go to hell too. Twice.
The stakes are impossibly high for anyone to actually do anything about their situation, especially if they're a child. Let's talk about your upbringing, because I think it did have a huge impact on where you ended up.
Definitely. I think that because I was in that extreme situation of what happens when a person of extraordinary amount of power abuses of that power, and that was on the own women in my family. And so that led to my mom, my biological mother, who was just a little girl when she was taken to him by by my aunt who raised me, her older sister. But I mean, my grandparents obviously knew what was going on. My grandma, in some occasions, she used to make my clothes when I would have to go dance for him. So it's not like she didn't know. You know what I mean? So these women were so used to it. The women in my family were so used to being that object of his pleasure of his happiness, of his pleasure in any way, sense, shape, form, anything. We knew it was very ingrained in the women in my family, anyway. That's my experience, that we were objects for the apostles' pleasure. I think that being a little girl, where your mom, your biological mom, she leaves, she's nowhere to be seen, and you're growing up in, the court systems, you with social workers, because I have three older half brothers. I have one younger half brother. Like, we all have different dads. Like, we just have a crazy life. And then on top of it, I'm also being groomed little by little, that I would, my body, my mind, my everything belonged to the apostle of Jesus Christ. And one day he was going to take me away like a princess, and he was going to make me his concubine. And that day did come. I was 13 years old, but before that, I was already dancing for him. He was getting to know who I was, and that's it for predators. For predators, especially child predators, those are their playgrounds. Going to spaces where children are not protected, when the dad is absent, when the mom is absent, or maybe the mom is very much there, but mom has to work 2, 3 jobs, right? Because dad's not around, and she has 2, 3 kids. She's also trying to get him, or went into college. She has a teenager. She has maybe a toddler. Like, all of these things that, unfortunately, for my mom at such a very young age, she took her life. She unfortunately had a very long struggle with drug abuse. But why? Because she was a little girl being abused by her church, by her family, and by the leader. And she was just a little girl. So what did you expect? This little girl, yes, she runs away from home. But why did she run away? And they called her a runaway. Yeah, she was a Latina little girl in East LA. Who the fuck cares? I'm sorry, I'm cursing.
It's okay.
But like, that's how they saw my mom. Like, who cares? She's a runaway. She's Mexican. She's a Mexican kid, a brown kid. Even though she was light skinned, but she was still, her last name was Meza. And so that's unfortunately her life. And she went into the arms of one person, and then the next, but these are 3 abusers, my father including one of her abusers. I never met him. I don't care to meet him. That's how I am in my life right now. I don't care for it, or his family. But it just really, with a little girl who's already being so, in any sense, left alone, right, by people who should have protected me. You have a 16-year-old kid now. When Nason comes around, she's a 16, 17-year-old teenager, who doesn't have a dad, who's the only 2 dads that I kind of, was my grandpa, but he wasn't really ever around, and my aunt's husband, who molested me.
Oh, jeez.
So I hated him. And I'll say it now, like, I hated him. He used me. He's a minister now. And who did I go to tell my minister what he had done to me, what my stepfather had done to me? My minister. Who was my minister? Nason, who then became the leader of the church. Like, he was my pastor. And he said, oh, well, he's in finances and commission, and I have very good, well, it's normal for pretty girls like you. So this is my pastor. And to me,
my gosh.
with all of my upbringing of understanding that I was an object for men and pleasure, that nobody really taught me what abuse looked like, or what, let alone trafficking. Like, I didn't know what trafficking was until much later.
They taught you the opposite. They taught you that this was normal and accepted and a privilege. And that's what's so twisted about it. It's not even just the absence of education. It's forcing you into something and telling you it's a good thing.
And it normalizes it for us. And you can imagine, in my mom's circumstance, not my circumstance, I was lucky enough to have the husband that I got, because it's a long story with marriages and all that stuff in LDM, but I got a good one. My mom, she wasn't that lucky. She was very little, and I don't know how bad it got for her to have left her 5 kids behind, and she was already so lost in it. So they destroy families. They destroyed my family. LDM, it didn't break my family. It destroyed my family. And I blame La Luz del Mundo for my mother's death. And to this day, they will never, ever, ever be able to make up for all of the damage and the harm that they caused to me. And I know that to millions others, to millions, and they still keep doing it to people in their church, to the members of their own church. Those are the ones that they're abusing now. Like, they're not abusing me anymore. Well, they are, because all the harassment and all that stuff. But what I'm saying is, like, these kids are so normalized in LDM. I was so normalized by the abuse, the separation of the family inside of LDM. Even they don't really teach about like family values or like community, family love, family support. Like, those are not conversations that LDM has. Now they might say that they are, yeah, because they're in the eye of so many people and of the federal government. So now they're behaving, or they're trying to behave, but they brutally abuse of women, of children, and also of men. Like, the amount of physical abuse that also goes on loyal followers of LDM is horrific. People die. They've died here in California. They've in the United States, and then they get their bodies, they take them somewhere else, and they say that they had an accident, and they'll have like 15 members say the same thing. Hey, we all saw the same thing, nothing happened. Yeah, like, and this is all because they use this to make churches, they use this to make pastor's house, they make us, we have to, they have ranches. So who upkeeps those ranches? I had Revens, but I have friends over in Texas who did the Texas, ranch. They have one in Georgia. They have a whole bunch in Mexico, in El Salvador. They have so much of it already. But, how do they have it? Off of the backs of their members. And if we didn't do it, forget the fact that you will no longer have graces in your own home, or your community. They will tell the entire community if you said something or did something that was not aligned to their doctrine, or personally bothered the minister, or let alone if it was a member of the family. Oof, they shunned you in front of everybody. And they made sure that everybody knew that you were the enemy. And now with those of us who have been vocal about it, they say we're cancerous. They say that we're tumors. They say that you know, we're the worst of the worst. But that's what happens with all of these criminal cults. Like, they're fraud, force, fear, man. That's how it is. It's fraud, force, fear. They're mafias. They're
Wow.
gangsters.
Can we talk about what the draw is for someone who sees this going on? And obviously, there's a lot of brainwashing and control manipulation for them to say, well, you're doing this for the apostle, for the messenger of God. And they have this higher purpose that's existential. But on the surface, when they see people losing their life because of this free labor in construction, when they see people being beaten down and also being forced to give sometimes the only money they have for their 10% tithe, what is the draw that keeps people in and keeps people wanting to be a part of this church?
Salvation. Man, you're scared every day that it can be the last day, that God's coming. And every day for most of us, because are some that left. Sometimes it's just like their parents weren't in church and they got in at an older age, and then they got out and they're like, well, I got out and that's not true. None of that happened to me. And it's like, no, well, this is for when you're like multi-generational in it. It is just a way of life. You wake up in the morning and you pray and you thank God that you're alive. You pray for the apostle. You pray that he's happy, his family and anything surrounding him, his home, his animals, anything that you can do to make his life happy, then that's your way of putting pearls on your crown in the sky. That's your way of putting, like setting you want to go to heaven. You don't want to go to hell. Like, I don't want to burn in hell. It's horrible. And then the way that as kids, like that's really all they talk to us about in the studies. Like they divided us in kids with like the sections of ages. And it's like when you're a kid, all of these songs and like verses of the Bible of burning in hell and like all of these horrible things, you're terrified. I always say, and my friends and I, we're like, man, the Bible should be only allowed to be read by adults, not for children. But unfortunately, with the division of state and church is just like we're so behind. But definitely, like the Bible was used as such a weapon of fear. We were so scared all the time. And then, yeah, like growing up, obviously, like how can you be the perfect citizen in LDM? Not in the world, not in the world, in LDM. So we were taught laws of LDM. We were taught beliefs, morals of LDM, but those didn't align with the real world, right? With the laws of the real world and the community around us. But yeah, just growing up in all of this, it was just so normalized. And then into your teen years and then your young adult life. And every day, everything I did was surrounded by just me really not wanting to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. And you go through whatever it is that you have. I'm not going to say we didn't have happy moments, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't remember a day being a kid or a teenager where I didn't imagine myself disappearing or not being alive anymore. Like, what if random thoughts, like, what if there was a car accident and I got to die and I could just like go to heaven now? I just didn't know that unconsciously. I wanted an escape so bad. So kids don't know that they're being normalized to abuse.
Yeah.
And
it's just your reality.
It's just your reality. Yeah. And you don't really understand it until you're outside of it and you're seeing it on an outside perspective in.
Well, also, we were talking about how some people say, well, that's not my experience, and so I don't believe you. There was this entire secretive side of LDM that you were a part of, this unconditionals and the extent that it went. So maybe people knew that it existed, but they didn't know really what was going on. And we see that in so many different cults, right? Where you don't really get to that higher level of information or exposure until you're in for a certain amount of time. And by the time you get to that point, you're trapped. You can't really get out of it. And I think one thing that struck me too is how contradictory it was. So you talk about dancing for the apostle and how the rules in LDM are so strict as far as no jewelry, long skirts, don't wear tight clothes. It's very, very modest. But then you're being expected to dress in these skimpy outfits to dance for him. And can we talk about that moment where your brain was like, hold on, is this right? Or is this okay? Or what am I doing here?
Well, I think I've said this a couple of times in the past, but I always go back to the one moment where I remember that this was in the presentation that we gave him up in Big Bear, because he has his like little village up in Big Bear, and his kids all have a house, and Nason had a house there, of course, and now everything belongs to Nason, right? But in any case, Samuel was there. There were some ministers there. There were his family members were obviously there, like they are in most when 4th of July or Christmas or Thanksgiving, whenever they would come. In any case, I remember we had to wear this outfit. I mean, I was used to dancing in other things for him, like belly dancing and like in these different costumes. But that specific time, I remember it was just so uncomfortable when I would even walk, because the booty shorts would go up like a thong into my booty cheeks. And I'm sorry, that's just my mama talk. My mama talk. And it would rise up to my booty cheeks, and I was like, and I would look at myself and I would feel myself. I'm like, he is going to get so mad at me. And he knew me by my name at this point because of my mom. And I'm like, he's gonna get up and he's gonna get mad at me. And I was waiting for it. And I saw the other girls too. I'm like, two of the girls, like it was my mom that took them. When I say mom, I mean my aunt. She was my legal guardian, so she was like the only mom I knew, and she was my groomer, and she didn't really know those two girls. She had barely taken them, but for me, like he knew who I was, so I was waiting for the ven para acá, and I was like so terrified, and I'm like, this is just like I'm gonna get in so much trouble. And no, he had the biggest smile. He had the biggest smile, and for me, that was like, oh well, he's not mad. We're making him happy. Like I wasn't. No, I mean, come on, my mom was there. Like my minister was there. My all the like a lot of people were there. But this isn't something that we did when we did the public theater performances for him, because there was always something that the church was always doing for him, with his birthday or whatever. And it was all like these cultural events, right? These nonprofits that they say they have and they do all this shit, it's all bullshit. That money used to go into making him parties. And so, in any case, in this circumstance, his mom had a nonprofit called Fundación Elisa, where she would give back to kids and the moms and feed the poor. It was all bullshit. It's not true. So we would give him parties, like we would make him parties, and some really cool cultural stuff that, girls would come and they would bring like Mexican dancers, and but these were all brothers of LDM. Like if somebody sang opera, they would come and sing opera. It doesn't matter what, salsa or I don't know, somebody would come in from Barcelona, a sister, and she would do her dance. Like it was all year round, many, many, many. In Mexico, here, it doesn't matter where you had to perform, but in any sense, they would say like, that's not true. I got to perform for him, and it was all cultural. It's like, why are they making it seem like they're saying all these lies? And it's like, well, I don't remember you. In some cases, I'm like, you were there, so stop lying. In other cases, it's like, you weren't at the other events where the clothes wasn't any longer cultural, and it wasn't adults performing now. It was kids just performing, little girls.
Yeah.
Or young boys, like, because we had groups, and we had them by ages. And for example, the boys that were in my group, they were my age, maybe 3, 4 year, 5 year difference at, just 6 around there. The age gaps, they would separate you. But yeah, like the clothes was very small. It was the way you see it now, very sexualized. I remember once I had to perform. I think that was the time that I did it. Yeah, it was "I'm a Slave for You" by Britney
No.
Spears. Yeah. And I did a
Oh my
post on
God.
this on Instagram, and I was like crying the entire time. I was like, because I was hearing the song, and I was like, I love you, Britney, but this song is just so triggering. But
Yeah.
if I reacted like that with all the songs that I had to, perform for him, I would have no music. But that one hit hard, and I made a post about like, yeah, it's like I was literally seduced to promise my body for him, and to say I'm like a slave for you. Of course, there's a big difference between the art that was being done at the moment, but like I was literally being taken as a slave to him while dancing for it,
Yeah.
in a top and a booty shorts they were just very, they're like not even in a cultural fest. And those are things that I see now that like 20-year-olds wear, and not an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, because
Yeah.
that's the age I had to wear that, and that's the time where I was like, oh, he's gonna get mad at me. But yeah, and at that
Oh,
moment, after that, nothing else. It was like, oh, it does. If it's for him, it's all good. It's for the apostle of Jesus Christ.
yep. And that's how people make exceptions because, well, if you say no, you're saying no to God. But even though they're not really connecting the two of this is clearly a sexual fantasy, and is that something that God would want you to do as a child? But people just aren't, like, the disconnect is so clear. And can you explain for people what an unconditional is or meant for you?
Well, as an unconditional avowal, what that, and now they're saying that anybody who's a politician in LDM, anybody who is going to school, got college, you're all unconditionals. So they changed the rules a little bit, but me growing up, and how I was raised to be an unconditional vow. It was, you promise, he kept it. He will decide if he takes it or not. And in my case, when I was taken, he kept it and it was sealed. So my life was no longer mine now. He decided what I studied, if he wanted me to study, if I was going to study, if I was going to go to college, like, what were you going to study? You can't make that choice on your own. What you do on your time. So my life was literally 100% LDM. And they'll go back at me because they go into like a Facebook account that I had a long time ago, when I posted pictures of when I was in film school. And they're like, this was you. And you see how you had pants on. And yeah, this is all LDM people, by the way. And they'll try to get at, and I'm like, don't you understand? I'm like, I was in college and a normal person would say, yeah, she's wearing pants. And I was on a set. I was not going to be wearing a long skirt. And even people in my college would be like, girl, like, aren't you tired of wearing those long skirts? It's cold. Put some pants on. But I didn't see it that way. It's just, so I would have to wear pants on the set when I was working because it was for safety purposes.
Yeah.
But in any case, like, even the way I dressed, it didn't matter where I was, where I would go. It was all because he was telling me what to do every step of the way, where I lived. And when Nason took me, that was, by that time, I had no connection even within the LDM community. It was just he and me, him and me. He decides where I live. He decides if I'm gonna, have a phone or not. So he made every decision of my life, and that was being an unconditional. You are a property.
So you were indebted or in servitude to both leaders because of the crossover.
Yeah. I mean, I was taken by Nason when I was still like a young teenager. So I didn't get to live the horrible things that other survivors had to go through with Samuel. I heard so many of the stories of the assaults that they had to go through in his hands. And I'm like, I feel so lucky that when I was supposed to go into that age where now he had that group particularly, that's when Nason started to just, this one's for me, I guess. That's what he did. I no longer served his dad. Like, I wasn't around. And if he had like a political event, let's say in Guadalajara for the Holy Supper, I would serve him directly. I would serve Nason directly. It was very much about like which concubine would be called and the loyalty to the apostle always. But yeah, you don't get to choose your property.
So when it came to Nason, was he doing the same things that his father was doing with these young girls? Did he continue that?
He did. And when I got to live it and seeing it from an outsider's perspective now, in the sense of I'm no longer that little girl. Now I was seeing it as an adult. That's why when he would ask me for things that were more out there, like to physically now touch them, for me, I was like, that's where the clash would go in me, because with Samuel, it wasn't like my mom was doing something to me physically. Like, she wasn't me. Like, she wasn't, like, I didn't live that. I didn't, I didn't have a sister like putting me on a bed and like taking pictures of me and sending them to the apostle. Like, that didn't happen with me. Now, in the dancing version way of it, yeah, with me, I was like totally educating them on how they should stand, how they should sit, how they would serve, how to essentially please him, how to look pretty, how to always be showered, how to always, what senses you can wear, what not to eat. These are things that will make him happy. But then that's how I was groomed at that age and younger for Samuel. So there were things that when I now had to be that person that my mom was, since I didn't live it in the sense of what he wanted me to do, it was like a clash of like, well, why is he asking me to do this to them?
Yeah.
And since I had already lived abuse before by a family member, those were things that, like, as a little girl, like as a little girl, I didn't see how any of that meshed. And Nason, to me, I mean, he to me, he was not only, and I know it's going to sound, well, it's part of my trauma. He was not only my pastor. He was not only the person who also, touched me or sexually would be sexual with me as a kid. I'm still a teenager, but I also saw him like a dad, so I had all of these like different ways of seeing him. He was my everything. Because I didn't, my aunt's husband, like I hated him. I had to tolerate him, and I had to still respect him. He and like my grandpa wasn't, I wasn't really close to him, but Nason, he was in my life like 80-90% of my time, when the other time I was at school. So yeah, like all of that crossover of like was very, very difficult. And then like towards the end, when he would get upset when I wouldn't do other things that he would ask, so much so that he took that quote unquote blessing away from me and gave it to my minister's wife in the same team, I guess you would say, like the group with Asalia, who's like chief in command of groomers. She's got a warrant and she's hiding out in Mexico. And in any case, yeah, I mean, with Nason, for me, it was just like a real big mind fuck. Like a lot of the things that when I decided not to do, I got beat for it. I got beaten for it. He would use a lot of like like religious things in a sense of like, if I was there was a prayer at 6 o'clock, right? Because he had me move from Ensenada. That's where I lived with my husband and my daughter. When he took his apostle reign, the second year he called me to go live in Guadalajara again. Because when they married me, I had no communication with him anymore. It was all him and my husband, because my husband was working for him in the political side of things. And it was just me, my daughter, and church, like a normal LDM person. Yeah, when he took me back, that's where shit got really, really scary really fast, because being a kid, like I said, I did the dancing, and yeah, like I was taught to be seductive to him and be cute and caress him and touch him, and if he did decide, but Samuel didn't physically do that to me. So now me doing this to these girls, to these girls for Nason, I was like, but, and then I'm a mom as well, so I'm like, oh, but it was this thing that me and God, and I was like, damn, I'm gonna go to hell because I'm just thinking that it could be wrong. And I would like sometimes, I would throw up all the time, and I mean, trigger warning. I've struggled with bulimia since I was 13, 14 years old. And it all derives back to like what I could eat, what I had to look like, what size I had to be. And so it just got really bad. And it started tearing up my body just with things that I started to see. And one occasion, and that's like what really just like broke a lot of the things inside of me that almost led to me ending my life. If it weren't for my husband that saw me and found me, then I wouldn't be alive. But it was with a 14-year-old boy, and this little boy's mom was there, and it was a him and it was a Salia, and what he wanted me to do, and it was such like mind at that moment, because of everything that was happening. I wasn't in that position at 14 years old and have the apostle do what he wanted me to do with him and his mom present. So this was so normalized. I always go back to that moment of where I didn't say no. It's just like, I'm like, I can't. And I was shaking. And I've said it before, and just touching him in the sense of, he had me kiss him, yes. And I've said this to authorities, and I've been very vocal about it. But in that moment, he was cold. He was colder than I was. And I was shaking. I could feel myself shaking. And the air wasn't on. So, I mean, and it's like a mind fuck. It's really like a mind. And when I said I couldn't, like, damn, like the physical pain that he put me through for not complying for what he wanted me to do. I can't explain, but I needed medication after that. They sent me to go get a shot by one of the members there to release the pain. But it was all the like religious, like, I don't know, not religious, or yeah, like the spiritual stuff. Like, now that's you and God. Like, you're the one that said no to God. Just know, I'm only the apostle. I can only intersect so much, if you make me happy. But that whatever you not do, or choose, or think that you can have a right to choose, that was now a bond that we were breaking with God. So just it was just such a mind fuck with so many things.
Yeah. So he was asking you to do things with this 14-year-old boy with that boy's mother present?
Yeah,
Oh
with
my
that boy's mother
gosh.
present. And
What?
this is just, and that family is just, because I know that family has just generations of child abuse from the leadership. And it's so normal, and it makes me sad. It makes me sad because I'm like, I get it, like, it was done to me. And then becoming this young teenager now at the hands of Nason, and he did it so slowly. I always see it like, those predator like documentaries, like when the cheetah, or these predators, and they're like really go and they take their time to look for their prey. And that's, and I'm like, man, that's how he did it with me. He normalized it to where I was so young. Like, he took advantage of the moments that I didn't have a dad. And he knew about Luis. He knew about my aunt's husband. So he knew that I was unprotected, and he knew that my aunt was an unconditional to his dad. They grew up together, basically. Like, Nason and my mom, they were very, very like close in age. They knew each other as teenagers. She was in his dad's house. Like, she would travel with him. She was one of his concubines. And so he and my mom, like, they go way back. And yeah, so it's like I didn't really stand a chance. And I think this
Yeah.
is what happens in a lot of occasions with like little girls who, grow up in like the system, or like broken homes, outside of just an like LDM or a cult. It's just like this little girls, little boys, children, particularly more girls. Those are just the statistics. It is 1 in 3 girls, and I think 1 in 4, 1 in 6 boys will go through trauma by the time they're 18.
Yeah.
But man, if these kids are in broken homes, and then you put them in a cult or grow up in a cult, it's like, yeah, it's horrible.
What's so nefarious about all of this is that Nason was grooming you while you were technically belonging to his father, knowing that he was going to, in some ways, inherit you. And it's so disgusting to picture that he was really, like you said, playing the long game, and he wasn't stupid. He knew what he was doing to get you under his control. And for you to be able to have those red flags go off in your head is so lucky in some ways, because some people would still be blind to that. So for you to be able to go, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel right, and to push back, that says a lot. And also, while you're married, he's doing this while you're married with a child. I mean, there's so many layers to this that are just blowing my mind. I'm so sorry you went through that. It's unconscionable to think that someone could put you through so much. It's so intentionally and so methodically. And can you talk about how you weren't allowed to choose your husband, about how you were assigned a partner?
Just to tie up a little bit on what you just said, it and I think that this is how, when you get used to trauma, it's like that study that was done on frogs, and until it
Yeah.
reaches its boiling point, like, they won't know that they're in boiling water and that they're potentially going to die at any moment. They don't feel it. It's part of their normalcy. And that's kind of how it was. Not kind of. That's how it was for me with Nason and his dad, and just my whole life, just like upbringing. But it's not my own. It's not the only story. Like, I run into so many survivors who have been in these high control groups, where they are victims of sexual assault and groomed by the leader himself, right? And it's just like the same patterns, and I just, yeah. So with my husband, in La Luz del Mundo, like we mentioned, there are laws. And one of the laws is that you can't marry outside of LDM. We stay within LDM. And why I believe now that it was because the sense of control, right? And if you're going to have kids, they both need to have the same mindset,
Yeah.
the same cultural upbringing, and our culture, our everything was LDM. So when you would bring somebody from the outside, like we would look at them and like, oh, let's be nice to him or let's be nice to her. Why? Because we want to bring her in or bring him in so that they can get baptized. Once they are baptized, it's like, okay, let's move on, right? But it's always when you do get married, and what would happen is that they would stand the person up that's considered fornicating, or you don't get married by church, you don't have any authority to speak to any of the brothers. Why? Because you fornicated with an outsider, a Gentile, and so you broke the law. And then they would stand them up in front of the church and say the most horrible things about them, and you weren't allowed to speak to them, talk to them, have any sort of like community with them. Same thing, like if they had sex even with the same member of the church, but they would marry them as well, and like again put them on probation. And probation was like, let's say they give you a year, right? Which is usually like that. You get probation is usually like a year, but it can go up to like 6, or if the apostle gives it to you, it's like 10 years, 15 years, or whatever. It's like a sentence, right? It's like their own personal sentencing. And if it was like, let's say 18 months or 12 months, if you died or anything happened to you in those 12, 18 months or whatever time they gave you, 10 years, you would go to hell, and twice. So doble condenación, like double. So there would be hell, and then whatever comes after hell, that too. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I hear it now, and I'm like, man, I feel bad for us.
So this is if you had sex before marriage, they would make you get married and then still continue to punish you.
Yeah. So like, let's say if you got married with somebody who was outside of LDM, right? And he or she would bring in their spouse, and even though they were already in probation, the spouse is not, because it's not the spouse's fault. Like, they're Gentiles, they don't know what they're doing, right? They were dead and now they're going to be alive. We want them to be alive. We want to save them. Let's get them to get baptized. So then when they're finally baptized, they're not on probation, but when they're finally baptized, yeah, I mean, they're like, they start brand new. Like they start brand new, but not the person who committed the crime. Like, LDM is brutal, unless you have somebody in the high ranks that will be like, okay, well, what are you going to do for me, basically? But usually for most of, like, I would, Nason would threaten me all the time with having me on probation if I choose, because if I wouldn't answer a text, or if I would not, I don't know, a call or something, he would go and like stand outside of my apartment or my work or my school. And if I chose to walk away from him, like, that's sure, but I'm gonna put you in probation. And he would make sure, it's like a blacklisting, right? But for LTM, for LTM. So yeah.
Was it Nason or Samuel who assigned you a husband?
So Samuel, he had already been told from what a minister's wife had told me, and my own brother, my half younger brother, they had already told Samuel. And it turns out that Samuel had heard from different people that Nason had an inappropriate relationship with one of his concubines, which is Ruth's, my aunt, or my mom. She worked for Samuel. So she was one of his paralegals, and she worked on his legal team and stuff. So I was very much still in his radar. And when he found out who Nason was doing with for a while, he was like, well, he told my aunt, it's better that it's with somebody we trust. So, sort of keep it in a safe space. But towards the end, when Samuel was starting to get sick, Nason was sort of starting to like thrive. But there were many ministers who were trying to use this against him. So, I mean, I was one of those people that his dad just had to be like, you know what? Get that girl out of here. And yeah, that's what happened. I was like 3 months from graduating from finishing film school. And I had to get married with my husband. I had met him already through, Nason had sent me to Ensenada for a communications thing with Berea to go film a show there. All LDM. This is all within LDM. And I met my husband there. I thought he was the most handsome guy in the world. And I had never seen somebody so handsome. And he was very sweet. I felt butterflies when I saw him. This was all in one day. And Nason was there. So he was very he was looking at me the entire time. And so it felt like I could go and talk to this guy. And I had a friend who introduced Shadim and me. That's my husband's name. He he asked me, he went running after me. He's like, can I have your phone number? Because we're both from church. Like we're he's my great uncle actually preached to his grandmother, and that's how his grandmother got baptized, and then the lineage of his family that got into LDM. So I'm like, I'm sorry in the name of my family. I'm sorry we did that to you guys. I told him I couldn't give it to him. No, because Nason would pay for my phone like that. If Nason would ask for my phone, I had to give him my phone, and he was gonna find Shadim's phone number there. So I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. And he's like, well, can I get your? I think it was like MySpace or something like that. And I'm so old.
I had it too. It's okay.
And I was like, hey, do you remember me? I'm that girl that was from Berea. And I wanted to tell him, we're going to be going to Tijuana. Maybe you can talk to your minister because we would like to go film the show over there. And when I say show, it's literally just the consecration and making sure that it all looks legit, because his dad would watch the consecrations live from around the world to see what everybody was doing. It's really creepy. Yeah, that's where I really started to like him. And then Nason calls me into his office one day and gives me this 411 X-ray on who Shadim was. He knew everything about his mom and his history, and he had talked to his minister already. And he's like, he's not a good guy, and you remember that you belong to my dad. This isn't something that you would like to go on probation for. He's like, but you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying that this is what you would go through. It was a couple of months, and my aunt was like, okay, the servant of God wants to marry you. There are some brothers that they're looking into, but it's happening because the whole thing is getting way out of line. Like Nason he was being very obvious with certain things, and his enemies were using it against him. We would run into people in the mall that were members of the church, and he wasn't with his wife. He was with this young, I was 21, 22. He could be my dad. So it was very obvious, and it's not like I was with the kids. So it could be like, oh, she's just the nanny, because they always had nannies, or I would always take care of his sister's kids, for example. It wasn't the case. We were all alone. And then I was one of the reporters in the church too, so I was kind of known as the Berea girl, and it was just, he was being very obvious, and his enemies in LDM were like, look at what he's doing. That's not what an apostle would do. So I was like, please, I asked my mom, and please tell Brother Uciel, please tell them that I want to be happy. And I found the best guy. If the servant of God if he could know about him. He works in politics. We're always looking for these good profiles for the church, right? And yeah, he got approved, bing, approved. because of, he had like an aunt who was one of the a concubine, and like his, more than anything, like his political work that he had already been doing prior. And he was in a political party that LDM, that it's actually really hard to get into, and LDM wanted in. So they saw my husband like a little, like, ooh, a little star. We got married at the beach, which that's never done in LDM. In LDM, it's supposed to be in the temple, and especially if it was a wedding of obedience by the apostle and like being joined, that's like only in the church. That's supposed to be only done in the church. But I mean, I was like, can I get married at the beach? Because he wasn't allowed to get married in the church because he got baptized at 25. He like left when he was a kid. He didn't get baptized until he was one of those exceptions where his mom was like, okay, fine, you're gonna go study, you're gonna go to college in Tijuana. He was from Ensenada. Go ahead. And he did, and he made his own life. He had normal friends. He had a normal, and that's what led for him to see a lot of things that when he found those text messages where he was like, what the fuck is going on here? Because if he would have been in a different circumstance, he would have been like, oh, this is normal. And I would still be there. And my husband would probably be one of my abusers too.
Wow. Was that what got you out then? Was your husband finding out everything that was going on while you were married with a child?
Yeah. While he was working with Nason in politics, he took me to Guadalajara. So I was separated by my husband and my daughter. And my husband was like on it, working and whatever. It was direct communication between him and Nason, and sometimes with his secretary, with Asalia. Like, yeah, I mean, I got to see him, I think like 2-3 times that year, my husband and my daughter. I missed like Christmas and all of that. But in any sense, like things were happening in that time frame when he had taken me back already, when I was already a mom, when I was already a wife. Like, I loved my husband. I fell in love with my husband. The apostle is always the man that you love the most in every sense, shape, or form. That's how I was taught, even as a man. So I would see him. He was the man and so when he died, then now his son is the man that I loved most. Before, it was just this whole thing where now my husband is this other man in my life that I just love in every way, shape, and form. And there were moments where he was in the hospital and he had an arrhythmia. He has Wolff Parkinson's White, and his his heart was just like really, really fast. And they had to use like those the electricity, what do they call bulbs?
Defibrillator?
Something like that. And I wasn't allowed to go visit him. Like, there were so many moments, like time frames of that whole year that just are so foggy. But I really needed him. I needed my daughter, and my daughter needed me. She was 4. She was 4 or 5. She was a baby. And I was going through a lot of crap. Like, I was a lot of my body was shutting down. I definitely think that if my husband hadn't seen it for what it was, and others have, like other husbands, like, know that their wives were used as like sexual objects, and they benefited from it through a political position, or they got another job, like being at a hospital, and now they get to be directors at that hospital because LDM has a lot of favors to ask, and now they're like cashing in. At that point, when he's like, no, this is not right, he's the first one to see it, and he's like, what's happening? And he still had to go to church. He had to take the Dominical. It was like the Sunday church. It was his day to take the prayer and the service, and he also was in charge of the kids, like the teens. And I, as his wife, also had to be in charge of it. But he was the one that would like really do all of the consecrations. If they wanted to play basketball or soccer or something, he would like work with them so that they could put the garden and all of that stuff so that the kids can play soccer. Yeah, if they wanted to have like movie night, he was the chaperone. So he would see like that the kids were all fine. They were all watching the movie. It couldn't be rated R. He was a good brother. And I was kind of like invisible in the church, honestly. And then I really struggled with Spanish. My Spanish is awesome now, but back in the day, it was much harder. My husband, him finding all this out and like getting out, for a lot of the brothers, it was really like, whoa, like, brother Sharim got out. Like, I don't understand what's happening right now. And he was like, he checked his phone. He's like, this is his number. This is the servant of God's number. Like, and he's been very vocal about it. He's like, I could have even said, you know what? Yes, her, but not him. Because my husband also doesn't have a dad. Like, he lost his dad to drugs as well. And, he also grew up in a very broken family. And he saw Nason, and Nason was very nice to him. And the time that he did get to work for him, and my husband has said, like, he was a great guy to me, but I didn't know he was raping my wife.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know of the life that he had my wife go through, what his dad had done to her family. Like, I didn't know any of this. I loved them blindly. Because he's like, I got baptized until I was 25, a year before I got married with him, So he was like, he was born in church, and although he was brought up in the same ideologies, same morals, same principles, same everything, but he didn't grow up in that sense of like the normalcy of kids being taken for sexual pleasures to the apostle.
Yeah.
For him, that was completely new. So even when I was out and I would come back so depressed, like on the border of depression, of suicide. And at one point I was at the border of suicide, and my husband wasn't seeing it. He was just like on it with the apostle. He was on it, like working. And when he saw that all of this would happen, he started like connecting a whole bunch of stuff. And everything happened so quickly. I did understand that it potentially what was happening to me was never supposed to happen. And there was a possibility.
What was that moment like with your husband when he sat you down and told you this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening? I'm sure it was just this flood of emotions because there's probably a lot of guilt and shame, which is very common for survivors and very understandable. But there's probably also this, I knew it. I knew something was wrong and I knew I didn't want to be a part of this. How were you feeling in that moment?
I was told by the apostle through his ministers and my mom and my Aunt Asalia, that if I didn't convince my husband to come back to church, that I would go to hell. And not only me, him and my daughter.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, how am I gonna convince him that what he saw wasn't real? Like, that everything he just lived now was just, it was me lying. It was not what it seemed. It's not what it seemed.
So you still weren't even allowed to sit with the fact that something was off. You still had to gaslight yourself.
Oh yeah, I still believed in him.
Ugh.
They literally took my daughter, my phone, my everything. As soon as they had me, they picked me up. When the day after my husband found out, it was like, boom, they came, they took me, my daughter, everything. And I wasn't processing. I was just like on autopilot. And I would just, everything was going through my head. But like for everything, like I'm going to go to hell. Like, what's going to happen? My husband, my daughter, what's going to happen to my daughter? Is she also going to get condemned because she was a child of God? Like, she was a child of blessing. So we presented her like she was supposed to be fine to go to heaven. Like, what's going to happen? And all because I wasn't more careful, or maybe because I was, having those thoughts, and I was being punished. Right. So I was already thinking I was going to go to hell anyway. I was like, I'm going to go to hell anyway. So, I mean, I'm going to stay with him. Like, I would rather just,
Yeah.
I started lying to him about something about Nason. It's a long story. And he's like, I don't hate you, Sochi. Don't make me hate you. Don't lie to me. Because he was just like, where were you at all day? Like, why did you disappear? Why did you take Hattie? What happened? And I was like, how was I supposed to tell him, well, this is what I was told to do. He didn't want to hear it. He's just like, what the hell is going on? But I was like, I might as well stay with him if I'm going to go to hell anyway. I don't want my husband to be alone. And they did tell me that if he chose that there was absolutely no way to come back, well, then that's fine, because the apostle would always have a safe space for me. But I didn't want my husband to be alone. He was a good person. Like, he did nothing to deserve this, and I loved him. I still believed in the apostle. And so the next day I go to church and they're talking shit about my husband. They're saying that one brother, yes, that, but he used to help kids with scholarships. He used to, because he was a city council member, and he would help in any way, shape, and form that he could with the families of the church. If they didn't have a roof, if they didn't have, like, if it was just, if they would sleep on dirt, but he could get a way so that they can have now cement, right? Maybe scholarships or backpacks, or any way that he can help them. And I'm like, why are they doing this to him? He's done nothing. Like, he hasn't even, it's been one day, he hasn't said anything to anybody. Like, why are they treating us this way? And he and I wanted to keep believing that it was more the ministers. And then they sent bishops. He sent bishops, although the bishops said that he had no idea what was happening. But all these bishops were lawyers to speak to my husband and I in private. And so I was like, why? Because we were already talking to the moms. I had already talked to the moms. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I know that it sounds crazy, but this is how I was raised. And I know that I'm talking to you and you're the dad, and you're thinking that it's all like innocent and nothing is happening there. And they really are just taking coffee, or they really are just helping, and they're being secretaries, and they're just helping with paperwork. Like, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Like, there's no paperwork. There's none of that with the girls that are going. Like, there's something else going on. They're either being taken to other parties, they're being taken to these private units with him, but somebody's taking them. And I told him, I'm like, right now our minister's wife is taking them, and another girl from San Diego is taking them. So I mean, you should really look into their phones and see who they're communicating with. But this is what's happening. But that entire conversation in my head, I'm still like, I could be going to hell for this, because I'm telling them that he could be committing something wrong, that he could be wrong, that he can be committing a crime, that he can be doing something wrong. And to say that about the apostle, it's like, oh my gosh, que te raye like, you are going to be electrocuted at that moment. You're going to get a heart attack. Like, yeah. And if you were murdered, it's like, yeah, she deserved it,
Wow.
So
That's a lot to take in and process. And just the mental manipulation, the psychological torture that they were putting you through to stay, to be quiet, to not have a voice, and to continue to be abused. And it's amazing that you had your husband who was going, no, 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 this is wrong. And for you to recognize, why are they slandering my husband? Oh, it's probably the control. There was a moment that you had talked about off camera before we started recording about how the moment that you realized the apostle is not who he says he is, he's not of God, when you saw these little girls, you saw yourself in them, and you tried to warn the parents. Can you talk about that?
I still had something in me that said, what if he's still an apostle? Always. I think the day that I was public about it, and I was like, in my head, like, that I said, you know what? He's not. He's not, Sochi. He's not a man of God. Like, look at the people. These people are all, it's all like the authorities, and like so much media, so much people that are like, wait, this is wrong. Was the day of my press conference, like the day that I released the fact that I had been in a high control group. It was a church where my leader would abuse me, abuse other kids, and it's been going on for generations. I'm telling you, like, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of crimes against kids. It's not a blessing, from what I'm hearing, from what I'm seeing, from what I'm understanding. I think that's like the day that I liberated myself, and like confirming that he wasn't, no matter what, like, nothing, there was no going back after that. There was something inside of me that was angry, that I felt fire, because I saw myself at that age, in that vulnerable stage, in that girl. And that was one of the girls. There were two. One of the girls, her dad, that we sat down and we spoke with him. I told him specifically things that why I believed she could potentially be in danger. and to look into the people who she's speaking to, ask her more questions about what happens inside of that office, in these spaces. If she's invited to a ranch, if she's invited to a party or something, like, ask her more questions and get involved. Our minister's wife was taking her now at this point. Like I mentioned, a groomer here, two, actually, there were two. They're not family members, but they're very close. In any case, I was worried. And that's the same girl that was walking down. She had beautiful dress on, her walking with mom and dad to the pastor's house because they were with luggages. So that meant that they were on their way to go see him because of the way she was dressed. And I'm like, I was so angry. I was mad. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with them? Like, we literally told them, why risk it? Like, it's not too late for her, to my conscience, like, from what I know, it's not too late for her. You could still come in like the dad of the day and say, like, you know what, I'm going to take care of my daughter and say that nothing's going to happen to her. But these are people who believe that whatever it is that's happening to their kid, it's a blessing by God. And then kids are seen as adults at 14 years of age in LDM. So it's so easy for a parent to see their little girl as an adult, because she's 14 already. She's a woman now. Well, in LDM, that's how they saw. A lot of men that are much older than little girls, that when they're 14, they're married to them, and it's like, yeah, you're marrying this little girl to her rapist, and the parents can't say anything about it. Like, the family can't say anything about it because those are just the rules and customs of LDM. And that's why the fight is so hard, because
Yeah.
kids are kids and they shouldn't be getting married.
It's infuriating, especially when it comes down to those semantics of, well, that's just how we do things. Well, those are the rules. No, I mean, it's so complicated. Of course, it's nuanced. Of course, it's hard in that situation when you've been brainwashed to believe a certain way to just wake up and be like, this is wrong. It happens, but it's really hard for someone to just all of a sudden realize something is wrong when they've been taught the opposite their whole life. But it's just so infuriating that it's still going on, that parents are handing their children on a silver platter to predators knowingly, even in the room. I mean, it's blowing my mind that the parents are in the room for this sometimes, and they think it's a good thing. They think that they're going to be blessed by it. It just goes to show how much psychological manipulation that they're under to believe these things are good and not harmful to their child. So you finally get out. You are able to speak to authorities. And I feel like this is such a bigger story that we're already close to the end of our time here. Would you be willing to come back and do a live about how you were a part of getting these people prosecuted?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's a very important part, because
Yeah.
these are crimes being committed on human beings and on children. And at the end of the day, you can say you're a church or you're whatever you want to say you are. At the end of the day, you are an organization of crime against human beings. And
Yeah.
the federal government has now seen them as what they are. They're a business making money off of people, off of their faith, off of off of fraud, force, and fear, and that's illegal. That's illegal all over the world. Slavery is illegal.
Yeah. So I know you had such a huge part in this, and I'm sure that also goes hand in hand with your deconstruction and doing the docuseries and everything that you've done since then. So let's save that for the live, and let's end this episode with our Linda Listen moment.
Okay, yeah. Listen, Linda. Yeah, well, what, he wants her to listen to him. He's got something really important. Listen to me, Linda. He's really getting in there, and he wants her to pay attention. So I think that listen, Linda, I'm not sure if it's for myself or what I want to tell other people. Like, listen, Linda. It's like, I really want to tell city officials, like, listen, Linda, these places, these, not just because they say they're a church or they're a nonprofit, there isn't, there, you need to pay more attention, before you give people the keys to the city and you're shaking hands with a lot of these preachers or these like coaches or these musicians or artists. It doesn't matter who these people are. If you're going to be, you're going to give them an honorable place in society. And that means you can come in whenever you want. That's because you know that they're going to respect every child. They're going to respect your laws. They're going to be distinguished citizens. Nason Joaquin has so many distinguished citizens awards around the world. It's annoying. So did his dad, including here in California. Like, it's really annoying. And I'm like, aren't you guys listening? Like, don't you understand? So that's like my listen, Linda. I guess that's what I
Yes.
have going on.
I love it. No, it's so good. And that's why we're doing these things is we want to open people's eyes to what's going on around them because these perpetrators are smart. They're not going to do anything in the public eye. They're going to give you the best version of themselves. They're going to make everyone think they're amazing. And so you really have to set aside any preconceived notions of these people that you have and listen to the survivors. Listen to the voices of the people who have been there, who are coming forward. There are hundreds, and I think you even said thousands of women across the world who are saying, hey, this happened to me. Please pay attention. And so it's amazing that you are one of these guiding voices that has stood strong against this organization, regardless of their power. It's amazing that you're doing that.
Thank you. And it really does come down to a support system. My husband, my daughter, and a community. Community is so important for survivors, especially survivors of cults or religious cults, and in any sense of these criminal spaces,
Mhm.
coercive groups, just like community is just so important.
Absolutely. How can people find and support you? Where is your community?
It's, all survivors from all spaces, from different places. But I mean, if LDM, if they want to know more about us, I mean, you can find me on Instagram, just my name and then something healing. It's Sochil Martin something healing or like dot healing or something. And then I have other friends that I follow, and yeah, we really try to keep people informed on what's necessary to be informed on, like new charges. If they came out, like, hey, there are press conferences that the federal government has already given or statements, just so that people are aware and they know what's happening. And just things that we're doing, whether we really try and focus more on like policy. And that's really what we're trying to focus on. So if you're out there and you really would like to give time and in support of reforming human trafficking, our anti-human trafficking law by adding high control groups into that law. We have one that we've already presented in Mexico, but the more people that we have involved in that movement, the more we can get, you know, at the end of the day, for our laws to change, and
Mhm.
that's where I think our focus is. So
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing your story.
thank you for having me. Thank you. And I know I went off and it's just a long it's so long, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm glad I got to share it and get it out again. And if people have any other questions, yeah, reach out. And thank you so much for inviting
Yeah.
me.
Absolutely. Any other final thoughts?
No, I mean, just thank you for these spaces,
Yeah.
and for just continuing to talk about this. We need Spanish speakers as well. Like, if we had more place, if you're out there and you have this amazing way to have these types of platforms, and you're inspired by this type of work, it always inspires me, and to keep going, because we're all like a branch, right? We're like a tree, and we're going different ways to try and make this stop.
Yeah.
But definitely getting the word out there and having our voices told, it's so important. So I just really wanted to say thank you, and the people who weren't in high control groups and are always looking for ways to like share our stories, and you're involved in like research and and you guys are supportive with our community. Thank you so much, because it really is, the statistics are really high, and I think that, yeah, we just need to know our rights at the end of the day, right?
Yes, absolutely. And our community is so amazing. Guys, if you are still watching, thank you so much for making it to the end. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss the live when we do continue on with the story. And make sure to leave those words of encouragement down below for Sochil. It means so much to us. It boosts the algorithm. Like she said, we need to get these voices out there. We need to put the awareness out there. So interacting with the post in any way, even if you skip an episode or you don't want to listen to an episode, if you let it play in the background and you're our core audience, it tells the algorithm that you love it. And so it sends it to more people who are not subscribed. That's the best way to grow these videos and to show your love and support. If you do want to support further, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults to consciousness. We have some merch at cults2consciousness.com. We have a clips channel where you can find shorter 8 to 10 minute videos of our episodes. And if you like this episode, I'll link 2 more down here below. We are looking forward to getting on more survivors of La Luz del Mundo. And thank you so much. Until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.